You guys good? We'll go ahead and call the September 16th City Council meeting to order. If everyone please rise and state the pledge. Okay. Are there any announcements this time? Leah? Oh, okay. Very good. No proclamations. Any presentations? Eric, I know, has one.
Yes, I would just like to briefly recognize the HSE Academy of Finance students here tonight. There's approximately 30. They are here for the second year in a row and are going to be primarily here for the budget presentation portion of the evening.
Riveting.
Thank you for coming, guys.
Hopefully we'll be moving along, and if we have to have them come up early, we can do that. Okay, that's it? Finance Committee, John.
Yes, Rich, thank you very much. We have 5 items on the agenda tonight that we'll be discussing that were recommended for approval by the Budget Finance Committee. The item 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 were all recommended for approval, but that's the
good.
report.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John. Consent agenda, motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Pete, second by John. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Item 7, R091619B. Megan.
Good evening, Council. For the record, Megan Baumgartner, Director of Economic Development for the City of Fishers. Tonight, my first item is,
Is the mic on?
nope, yes. My first item is a new development project proposed for 11662 Maple Street. This is part of a project that came before City Council a couple of years ago with Justin Whalen and Adam Gillette. They owned this property but wanted to develop something larger. So the master station project was approved. So that's the area in red. They have now come back and are ready to develop on 11662 Maple Street with the elevation that you see here. It's a new 4-story office building, approximately 16,000 square feet. Again, anticipating investing about $2.7 million. And just like this previous project with them, they're requesting a waiver of impact fees and the ability to detain their stormwater in Maple Street. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions of Megan? Anyone from council? Seeing none, is there a
I'll make a motion to approve.
motion to approve by Pete? Is there a second? Second by Selena. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Megan.
Okay.
Item 8, R091619C.
The next item is for Sitel Operating Corporation. This project was announced last week that Sitel is going to open their first customer experience center in Fishers. They're going to be taking the 42,000 square feet of office space currently occupied by Jardin and Newell at 121st Street and Cumberland Road. They're committing to 300 new jobs with this development. And have asked for some incentives with the personal property tax abatement of 5 years at 100%, and then also a build-out grant of $100,000 that will be staged as a forgivable loan. So they are required to meet their employment marks and wages just like they would on their normal personal property tax abatement forms. They anticipate starting operations here in Fishers this fall. and we'll begin recruiting, and we've been working with them. They've been great partners so far on how Launch Fishers could serve as a potential HR screening area, and also looking for some temporary office space. So they've been a great partner, looking forward to getting involved in the community. They're based out of Miami, so unfortunately nobody was able to come and join us tonight, but I'm happy to answer any questions about this project.
Any questions? Brad?
Just personal opinion, I'd rather see a 10-year abatement at 190, 80, 70, 60, or everything. And if you do that, they end up at 550% versus doing it this way, they get 500%. But by year 2, we start getting something, and a little more in 3, a little more in 4. So it's still fair to get the abatement, but I would rather see it over 10 years at 10% decrease every year, is what I prefer to see instead of the whole 5 years. We aren't getting a dime for 5 years all the way.
Right, the challenge with personal property is the depreciation schedule that goes along with it. So it drops to like 30 or 40% in the first year. So it depreciates so quickly that there really isn't value for them towards the end. And it's an administrative burden on them and us. So we can consider it and take that back for our following projects.
So Megan, just to confirm that we're talking about a personal property tax abatement, not a
Correct.
property tax abatement.
Yeah, all of the real property is still
Taxable,
eligible, yeah.
and they're still paying taxes. I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Pete, second by John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Very good. Thank you. Item 9, R091619D. Still Megan.
Yes. This is the third amendment to our economic development agreement with Knowledge Services. So back in 2017, we did an agreement with them to build their new corporate headquarters at 106th Street and USA Parkway, Lantern Road, there on the east side of 69. Just because of this is their statement piece, this is the showcase of who this company is and for their employees. They've had a very thoughtful and kind of long and evolving process to get to this point today, asking for this third amendment. So if you recall, they've come back 2 other times asking for an extension for the construction date. So this agreement is asking for an extension of commencing construction in April of 2021, and then subsequently pushing back their commitments for completion of the project and the full employment. So they still anticipate having, I believe, 450 employees in this location, are still very, very dedicated to Fishers and to who we are and how we think that we'll be great partners together. But they've asked for this just so that they can be thoughtful and make sure they get this project right. Again, unfortunately, they weren't able to join us tonight, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions or comments to Megan?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Pete, second by Todd. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item 10, 091619B, request to approve the 2020 salary ordinance.
Good evening. For the record, Ethan Lee, Director of Human Resources. I'm here to propose the passing of the 2020 salary ordinance for the City of Fishers. I want to preface this by stating that only one of these changes results in a increase in headcount for our full-time employee positions. Also, all of these changes are represented in the 2020 proposed salary or budget as well. The first couple we have on here are moving the foreman position and the senior labor position to a higher pay grade. Over time, those positions have advanced in the responsibilities and roles that they play, so we want to move those into a higher grade. On the flip side, we have another position under Public Works, the Assistant Superintendent of Maintenance, who some of those duties originally applied to that position have shifted into some other areas, so we'd like to move that down to a lower grade. The staff captain position is basically a position that exists as far as under fire. It's a captain position. However, the staff captain position is more unique in that it's more of a 9-to-5 job as opposed to working the shift in a firefighter. We just wanted to identify that a little bit more clearly in its own title. Same thing along the lines of an operations manager, which is under the Parks Department. Again, just separating that position into its own category. Again, really not changing anything in our current structure, but better to identify that with its own title. The community risk reduction specialist is the position that would create a increase in the headcount for full-time positions. This is a part-time position that already exists under fire. Moving into 2020, it would become a full-time position, and therefore that's why we have it on the change here. The other two changes regarding our part-time locator and part-time zoning enforcer, and actually the part-time Parks and Rec coordinator, this is just a maintenance, cleaning those up because we capture those part-time roles in a one-size-fits-all, in a sense, office support title or field support title, again, keeping those under one area of the salary ordinance. And then the last thing here would be the 3% increase for elected official salaries to go along with the proposed 2020 budget for all of the city. If you've got any questions, happy to answer.
Questions or comments for Ethan?
Going to make a motion to suspend the rules and approve on first reading.
Motion to suspend the rules by Pete. Is there a second? Second by Eric. All in favor of suspending the rules?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Pete, second by Eric. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Very good.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Ethan.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Ethan. Item 11, 091619.
Good evening, Council President Block. For the record, Chris Greisel, attorney for the City of Fishers. I'm here tonight on item 091619, a request to approve an ordinance amending section 94.10 of the Fishers City Code of Ordinances. Last year, we brought forth an ordinance governing the excavation for underground utilities, which is applicable to all utilities. And the amendments brought for you tonight cover various items that we're attempting to polish up after a year of operation, and I'll go through those changes briefly. Before the regular council agenda tonight, we also had a work session with Metronet that was very productive in addressing some of these issues as well. First, there are changes made to the information that the city requires of all excavators in order to successfully pull an excavation permit, which include proofs of registration, IURC training, et cetera. Second, there were slight adjustments made to the bonding requirements, allowing blanket performance bonds to be accepted by the city and updating the maintenance bond standards for some of the restoration work. Third, with respect to underground utility hits, we have specified that an excavator has 3 hits to an underground utility line in 1 month or 2 hits in 1 week. The city may require the excavator to utilize hydrovac excavation for gas, water, and sewer utilities. This is an extra precaution that's been recommended by the IURC as a best practice. And further, we clarified those situations in which the City of Fishers may require a stop work order against either an excavator or utility for multiple hits. Finally, we codified some other excavation standards that were present in either current practice or through our permitting process, like on-site personnel, restoration, notification to property owners, that we wanted to make applicable to all. The penalty for violating this ordinance, which has not changed, is a fine anywhere from $200 to $2,000 with respect to an underground utility hit for a violator. In addition, the city may charge reimbursement for its emergency personnel costs. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and I respectfully request that you suspend the rules and approve this on first reading tonight.
Any questions or comments to Chris?
Motion to suspend the rules.
I will just add, I did want to comment because I think certainly there have been a number of incidents throughout the city that have been problematic, and I think what you are proposing with these changes really hits the mark with a lot of the concerns that were voiced to many of us, so I really appreciate what you've done here, so thank you, Chris.
Yeah, Chris, thank you very much. As you're aware, in my district, I have another gas strike that occurred in my neighborhood on a number of different occasions. And so this additional information we're going to be voting on tonight is going to be very helpful in that regard. Certainly, again, appreciate the work of the team here with Leah and Jason Taylor as far as they're helping with us in that particular instance. A lot of residents that were very upset. So hopefully this will give us some teeth to work with as we move forward in dealing with utilities being installed in our neighborhoods.
Thank you, John. So motion to suspend by Pete. Was there a second? Second by John. All in favor of suspending the rules?
Aye.
Opposed? Very
Motion
good.
to approve.
Motion approved by Pete, second by Todd. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Very good. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Item 12 is issue 2?
It is.
091619A.
For the record, Chris Greisel, attorney for the City of Fishers. I'm here tonight presenting on item 091619A, a request to approve an ordinance amending Chapter 71 and 74 of the City of Fishers Code of Ordinances. What we're doing essentially tonight is we're asking council to create a separate traffic schedule for speeding violations occurring within our residential or neighborhood streets due to the frequent presence of children and pedestrians. The city, through its Board of Public Works and Safety, has designated all neighborhood streets at 25 miles per hour. Pursuant to Indiana law, Judge Hankey is responsible as the judge of our city court for setting the fine schedule for our traffic violations. Today, all speeding violations are grouped into the same traffic fine schedule. So there's nothing in our book of ordinances that separates or differentiates a speeding violation on 116th Street versus a speeding violation in my neighborhood. In general, our traffic fine schedule today is if you're a violator of 1 to 15 miles per hour over the speed limit, it's a ticket of $44.50 plus court costs, which come out to $180. 16 to 25 miles over the speed limit is $64.50 with court costs that would come out to $200. And anything over 26 miles an hour is a mandatory court appearance. Keeping in mind that Judge Hankey has the discretion to authorize a violation up to $500. If council were to pass this ordinance tonight, the city's Board of Public Works and Safety would adopt a new traffic schedule, which would pull all the residential streets and neighborhoods out of that main thoroughfare schedule. So a new traffic schedule would just include only your residential and neighborhood streets. This new residential traffic schedule would allow Judge Hankey then to create a new residential traffic fine schedule. And while the judge has the discretion to continue to issue fines up to $500, in general, you could probably see a traffic fine schedule of a 1 to 15 mile an hour violation in a neighborhood or residential street being $64.50, which would be a $20 above surcharge, taking that to a total cost of $200. And any violator over 16 miles an hour in a neighborhood would have a mandatory court appearance before Judge Hankey. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. I believe I saw the judge here as well, so I'm sure he would be happy to answer any questions that you may have as well.
Questions of either Chris or the judge?
First of all, Chris, thank you and your team for working over the summer and putting this together. And I'll just reiterate the question to you and maybe to Mayor Fadness that I was asked today about this. So we're increasing the fines, right? But that only works if we're also increasing the frequency of patrols. And so the HOA member that I talked to today was concerned about us just increasing the fines and not also increasing the patrols at the proper hours of the day. So are we also going to be having some more boots on the ground in neighborhoods?
We continue to patrol with 16 is our staffing level on any given time and any given day in the city of Fishers. What is always helpful for us, if a particular HOA has a concern about speeding, letting us know. Our traffic division will then go about setting up traffic studies to see if there is indeed speeding, and then we have targeted approaches to that. Beyond that, every one of our police officers is expected to be in and out of neighborhoods throughout their district that they're assigned to throughout their shift, and if there's ever any concern about a presence or a specific issue, I would tell them to reach out and we'll address immediately.
I have a question here. So in some of the neighborhoods in my districts, our police officers will watch the stop signs. Is there any difference in the fines it's going to be for running the stop sign? I mean, a lot of them do the rolling stop, and, well, some of them don't even do a rolling stop. They go from, 40 down to 30 to go through the stop sign, I think. Will there be any difference in the stop sign fine within the neighborhoods?
Not with this ordinance, Councilwoman Stoller. This is just strictly addressing speed limits within the residential districts, but it's something I'm happy to look into. We have a traffic stop sign regulation and schedule, just like we do speed limit schedules as well. And I believe a stop sign violation, and the judge can correct me if I'm wrong, is that a state infraction or is that a local infraction? All right. So it's certainly something that I'm happy to look into. Sure.
Any other questions?
Just a comment to back up the mayor. The police doesn't know where the problems are unless you let them know. And they have done a fantastic job in Del Webb. Every time I've asked for help, they've been there. Kind of ironic, last month, one of the ladies was complaining. I called the chief, and next week he ticketed her. So it does work.
That happens more often than you think.
That's good.
I'll make a motion to suspend the rules and approve on first reading.
Motion to suspend the rules by Pete, second by Selena. All in favor of suspending the rules?
Aye.
Opposed?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Pete, second by Selena. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good.
I
Thanks,
appreciate that. The board will get on to implementing a new traffic schedule, and we should get this in the board probably in the next 30 days.
Thanks, Chris. Item 13, R09-16119E. It looks like Mayor is presenting. This is a public hearing. After the presentation, we'll invite members of the public who wish to speak. They will be given 3 minutes in which to speak. And before they speak, just introduce yourself by stating your name and address for the record. And then after all people have presented from the public, we will try and answer questions that may come up. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President Block. I think it's appropriate to talk about this in concert with what I'll present on next, which is the 2020 budget, but to provide some context for the item before you tonight. Back in 2012, 2013, the town of Fishers entered into an agreement with several other communities, in fact, all of the large communities in Hamilton County, to consolidate what is called PSAPs, or our dispatch center. So anytime someone calls 911, that it all goes to one consolidated service. The idea here was to provide some degree of standardization, some degree of consolidation that would allow for greater efficiencies in the way that we provide that vital service. The funding mechanism to date for this consolidated service was really twofold. One was E911 taxes on cell phones. So that gets distributed, collected to the state treasurer redistributes that money to the county, and that money is used to offset the overall cost of our dispatch services. The other amount, because that was never, it had never been enough to cover the actual cost of dispatch, the other amount associated with this was paid for through a series of intergovernmental agreements between communities and the county to make up the shortfall. Several of the smaller communities in northern Hamilton County, early on in the stages of this consolidation, did not pay anything into that agreement. Over the last few years, as those communities have started to grow and develop, we've come to the realization that a countywide revenue stream for a countywide service seemed to make the most logical sense moving forward. Recently, Arcadia had passed a resolution that starts a process of consideration for what is called a dispatch tax or an income tax, which is up to 0.1%. I think it's important to note here, your current income tax is 1%. What's under consideration tonight is not an additional percent, but it's an additional 0.1% increase in income taxes for all of Hamilton County to be able to provide the adequate funding needed for the long-term viability and operations of dispatch. If any of you have ever had the opportunity, which I take quite often, to ride with our police officers today, you will find a central nervous system in their police car that is pretty astounding, whether it's cell phones, laptops, radios. All these things have become vital tools as we deal with very dynamic situations. The greatest example of that being the active shooter scenario in Noblesville last year, where we had several different jurisdictions responding, thousands of calls being flooded in, and we had to make sure that we had interoperability, that we had the reliability of a sustainable network that would allow us to communicate in those critical minutes that make the difference between life and death. This cost associated with it has gone up. We were paying right around $1.3 million. They were proposing an increase of 35% to go up to $1.7 million. And that doesn't include some of the other things that would be offset in this. So if the council were to consider this tonight and approve it, this 0.1% increase in income taxes, what it allows us to do is to have an evenly distributed cost associated with this countywide service. It would allow us to start centralizing a number of purchasing items. For instance, mobile data computers, radios would all be maintained centrally at Hamilton County. And we really do believe that this is the appropriate and logical next step for a centralized communication system, network, if you will, within Hamilton County for the long term. So I'd appreciate your consideration tonight. I look forward to the public hearing and answering any questions that people might have as to the rationale or any detailed questions they may have on this issue. Thank you, Council President Block.
Thank you for that very thorough summary. That helps everyone, I think. Because this is a public hearing, if there are members of the public who wish to speak, please raise your hand. Mike?
Just quickly, if I can, Scott, just to reiterate, it's not the cell phone tax, it was a landline tax, correct? So it's happening in both.
Okay. Again, you'll be given 3 minutes to which to speak. If you'd state your name and address.
I'll try to be real fast. I'm not used to speaking in front of such an august group. My name is Michael Colby. I live at 7105 Cold Lake Drive here in Fishers. I stand here for you tonight in opposition of the increase in the tax. The mayor stole some of my thunder, and so that makes my time easier. Some of you were with me on the council when this occurred in 2012. You were as outraged about it as I was when we got the bill. We already did our budget, and suddenly we got a bill for $1.2 million. Now, as a result of that, the 911 Communications Board was created. And I've just pulled a little bit out about that. One of the things they're supposed to do is distribute funding to support delivery of 911 services and next generation of services. Their responsibility is adjusting the 911 fee to ensure adequate revenue for the board to fulfill its responsibility and dispersing the funds. And then I did some checking. In 2012, you received $300,641, Hamilton County did rather, from the state 911 board. And in 2014, that amount went up to $304,850. So it only went up a very small amount. And that's what it is currently. So it's been that amount since 9/14. Now, I did talk to the executive director, and he's in the same dilemma that you guys are in. They're responsible for pulling the network together and the texting services that are now available, so they're stretched. My point being is I think this is very similar to the school funding formula. That's upside down. It wasn't adequate. We weren't getting our share. We're not getting our share now. I see this as a double taxation. When the 911 board was pulled together, I attended many meetings, and that was the answer. That was going to take care of things. Well, it hasn't. The other thing I see this very similar to like a gas tax. In other words, you had 11,000 people or so, I've heard varying numbers, out at the Conner Prairie the other night. A number of those people were from out of the county. I don't know how many emergency calls were made from that venue that particular night, or other concerts, or out on the freeway. So people who are passing through the county are using our 911 communication services. We're subsidizing that, we as taxpayers. Now, I know you guys are into economic development, but your number one priority, in my opinion, is public safety. And I would recommend that you take a look at some of the spending that's being done elsewhere in the community and redirect those funds to pay for this and not put it on the back of the taxpayers, because it's another tax increase. We've got a wheel tax increase, we had a wheel tax implemented, and so forth. I guess that kind of concludes my 3 minutes. I think I'm over by 5 seconds. Please take this seriously. Let's not dump another tax on the back of the taxpayers. Let's get together with our state legislatures, talk to Senator Sparks, Todd Houston, and see if they can't fix the problem down at the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colby.
Thank you, Mike.
Any other members of the public who wish to speak? Sir?
Hello, for the record, Logan Day, live at 12812 Milton Road here in Fishers. I just have a simple question. If this increase were not to pass, are there any deficiencies that we see in our system now that we believe this would be able to cover? I know we've talked about increasing interoperability and interconnectivity with these systems, but are there deficiencies that we're facing today that we know that we'll be able to cover with this increase?
Okay, thank you. Any other members of the public who wish to speak? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Are there questions or comments from council?
Just on a personal note, I was the mayor of Greenfield in 2010. We were ahead of Hamilton County because we did our 911 center in 2010, and the same thing, Greenfield had to pay the majority because it was the biggest city, and it was unfair. The small towns were not paying like similar in Hamilton County, and we made a 5-year contract, so we were committed. And once the contract ended, then I wasn't the mayor at that time, but Greenfield didn't want to pay. And it put the 911 center in some crisis situations. So Hancock County has done what we are looking at in Hamilton County, and they passed that 0.1%. So I've dealt with it personally, like we're dealing with it now in Hamilton County, and I think this is the fairest way to distribute this to everybody in Hamilton County, not just the big 4 cities, and the smaller ones get away with nothing. That's not fair to us to be paying for towns that aren't paying. So I think this is the fairest way to do it. I've been there, done that since 2010 with this situation, and I've worked with the county council on suggesting. I've got them data from Hancock County for the last year to help them out making this decision, and I am definitely for it. And thank you, Mayor, for the proposition.
Thank you, Brad. Any other members of council who wish to speak? Questions?
Just some general comments. Scott did a really excellent job kind of laying all this out. I was, back when we were a town, I was president of council, I was on the 911 board that Mike had mentioned, and certainly we've seen the cost increase dramatically over the last years, and certainly there is a need there. That connectivity between the jurisdictions is very important. And Scott brought a great point in the Louisville shooting, and you saw all those jurisdictions come together. It was really important. Also comparing, looking at all our surrounding counties, what their county tax rate, we're looking at they're going from a 1% to a 1.1% rate. I looked around Clinton County, I looked at counties that touch us. Clinton County is 2.25%, Boone County is 1.5%, Marion County is 2.02%, Hancock County is 1.74%, Madison County is 1.75%. So when you look at that, the county tax rates, we're still the lowest of any of the central Indiana counties. So, and I agree with Brad wholeheartedly. It's the only fair way to spread that around. Because right now we're paying for Cicero, we're paying for Atlanta as a part of the big 4 that come to the table.
One clarifying point that I should have touched on, Council President Block, is this, again, is a part of a COIT council or a local income tax council. So what happens tonight, in your consideration, if you were to vote for it, in order for this to actually be enacted, 50% of the population represented by their legislative bodies would have to vote in favor of this for it to become reality. So even if the city of Fishers votes for this tonight, so far Arcadia has voted for it, which started this entire process, but Arcadia and Fishers themselves do not represent enough of the population in Hamilton County for this to occur. Each one of the municipalities will be considering this in front of their city council, and I would assume over the next 30 days to determine that. And so any makeup of those groups of communities, if it exceeds 50% of the population represented by the 2010 decennial census, would then institute this income tax. As to Mr. Colby's point, which I think is a very valid and good point about why there isn't enough money from the phone tax, both land and cell, because I was actually involved in that conversation pretty extensively at the State House. The telecom industry did a really good job in capping the amount that you can collect from that rate on landlines and cell phones, and that's why the state of Indiana, if you look at the revenue side, has been relatively flat. In fact, in some regards, in some areas it's gone down because a lot of us have gotten rid of our landlines. And so that revenue stream has not been adequate to meet the need, and part of that is, I guess, in some degree intentional, that they've capped the amount that can come from cell phones. Because as local government, we would like nothing more than to be able to find an alternative revenue stream. But in this particular case, they did cap that at the State House.
Very good, thank you, sir. Any other questions or comments?
I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to approve, and I want to thank the mayor, I want to thank Mike for bringing up your points, and certainly I understand everybody's trepidation to doing a tax increase, but as Mike diligently pointed out, this is one of the 3 pillars of local government is public safety, and we're always asking for home rule, and it's our job to make sure our citizens are protected. And I don't see another alternative that I have other than to offer the motion to approve.
Very good. Motion to approve by Pete. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Todd. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, members of the public. Item 14, 091619C, request to approve the 2020 city budget.
There's probably a button I should be hitting. See, I got it. Passed the test. Thank you, Council President Block. For the record, Scott Fadden, Mayor of the City of Fishers, and believe it or not, I believe this is my 12th or 13th municipal budget, and I was reflecting tonight before I came up here that in that 12 or 13 years, I remember the boom days of the town of Fishers when we were building 12 or 1,400 new homes a year, building subdivision after subdivision, and we thought there was no limit to what could happen for the city of Fishers, and all things were blue sky ahead of us. I also remember the dark days of 2008, 9, 10, and 11 as we hit the recession and our revenue trailed off significantly. And all through that time, the city of Fishers has never lost its laser focus on being sound financially on behalf of our community. In fact, during those most difficult times, we actually grew our cash reserves and continued to improve our credit rating while still investing in quality of life amenities here in the city of Fishers. Tonight would not be possible without the hard work of a number of people, and I think it's important to call those folks out. Lisa Bradford, our controller, and her team have done an outstanding job of collecting the information and making sure that we're making sound decisions. Elliot Hulkren, our deputy mayor, shepherding a lot of this work through the Finance Committee. And frankly, to all the members of the Finance Committee, thank you for your diligent work over the last 60 days to ensure that we have a well-informed policymaking body when it comes to the decisions around our financial future. And finally, I would also want to thank all of my department heads who make the budget process very easy. You know, every year we ask them to do more with less, and they continue to do so. And they do it. Really, it's just a pleasure to work with them as we try to achieve our goals here in the city of Fishers. So as we talk about the 2020 budget, I think we actually have a PDF here, not a PowerPoint. There we go. So the budget timeline, for the purposes of a public conversation, started in August 12th with a publicly noticed Finance Committee where we really started talking about the high level, where are we at from a fiscal plan. We always look out 3 years to see what our financial future looks like. And although we have specific goals for 2020, we're really looking out even further into 2021, 2022 on behalf of our residents. But I must say the work around a fiscal year or around a budget really starts in the April-May timeframe. So leading up to this, our staff, Lisa and her team, Elliot, we're really focused on a couple things. First is making sure that we understand our revenues to the decimal point. And so we feel very confident that the revenue forecast that we put in front of you tonight, the assumptions that we're making around expenditures are grounded in reality and in a conservative approach to our revenue forecast. So all that happens before we get to that first Finance Committee with the City Council on August 12th. From that point forward, we continue to talk to the Council and the Finance Committee, really starting at the high level and working all the way down into specific departmental budgets at the Finance Committee as well as the Council. We also had lengthy discussions on our overall debt strategy and the financial impacts of that debt strategy. So at a high level, the 2020 budget has a $100 million operating and capital budget along with an $18.5 million debt service payment with a total budget of $119 million. Now this is all funds included, so this is from our wastewater, stormwater, motor vehicle highway, wheel tax, you name it, all in $119 million, and our all funds cash reserve, so the amount of reserves we have is around $35 million, so just under 30% of what we're spending we have in cash reserves. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. When we talk about the buckets of money that make up that $100 and some million, these are the different breakdowns of the buckets. As you can see, the largest bucket being the general fund. Debt service comes in a variety of revenue streams that can be backed by tax increment financing, local option income tax revenue, general fund taxes or general obligation debt, as well as sewer and stormwater. And as you can see, we work our way down, and you can see the other funds associated with our overall budget. This is not an eye chart test. This is actually what was advertised in the DLGF for our budget, and this is just to show you that it was publicly noticed and put on Gateway per state statute. So let's talk about our overall fiscal health and just a little more granular detail of the budget. As we look at total revenues of $61 million in the general fund, as is the case in every year, our most valuable asset within our organization are our people, and that is where you're seeing a significant amount of the investment is in our people. One of the challenges that we continue to have and we're continuing to work on is a health fund, health care, if you will, continues to increase. Our community, our organization continues to be adamant about trying to bring down that cost curve around health care, and we've got a number of innovative things working, whether it's an employer-provided clinic, unique pharmaceutical programs that we have through the city. All those things we're doing in an effort to curb healthcare costs, but our healthcare costs are still going up. And so we're going to continue to try to drive that number down in order to allow for additional funding for discretionary items like capital and things of that nature. This year's budget, all in, revenues versus expenditures ongoing, we anticipate having about $197,000 surplus, if you will. And that gives us a little bit of cushion in case some of those revenues do not come in at the level that we think they will. And again, our ultimate cash reserve is $15.36 million. As I talked about earlier, when we think about the overall story of Fishers, and I look at this from Budget 101 when I used to teach this in graduate school, revenues in versus expenditures out. So we always want to make sure that we have sound fiscal health. How do we build those cash reserves? We spend less money than we take in. And so over the last several years, you can see a trend where we have continued to spend less money than we're taking in to build the adequate cash reserves that we need. There's lots of discussion today in the national media about a potential recession. The reason that we have these cash reserves are not only for bragging rights, so to speak, on bond proceeds or bond ratings, but it's really about making sure that we have the adequate reserves to weather any potential storm that might be out there when it comes to a recession, which we saw in 2008 and 2009. If we look at general fund expense by department or function, as we talked about earlier, one of the pillars of our organization is public safety. We're spending 63% of our budget on the general fund on public safety, as well as we're spending a significant amount of money in public works as well, with $7.1 million on infrastructure and the maintenance of that infrastructure. As for additional staff, or what are some of the adjustments to this upcoming budget, we are adding one additional police officer, as well as hiring a full-time body-worn camera coordinator. By January 1st of this upcoming year, we will be rolling out every police officer who is out doing law enforcement activity, unless otherwise allowed or an exception is granted because of undercover work or things of that nature, will have a camera on them at all times. Well, with that comes an incredible amount of footage that has to be dealt with. So anytime someone asks for a Freedom of Information Act, anytime there's discovery in a court case, someone has to go in and redact that information, pull out that information, and prepare it. And that, from all background information, all the research that we've done, will indeed take a full-time person to do that work. But we believe this is a sound investment in the transparency that we want to provide our residents. I can tell you when I talk to our law enforcement officers, they are ready and willing to take on the camera because they believe in the professionalism of their department and are willing to, and they actually think this will clear up a lot of complaints and allegations against the police department on their behalf. Along with that, we have approved positions for one full-time agri-park manager at our agri-park, as well as 2 full-time parks laborers to continue to improve the quality. As our parks begin to age, the infrastructure gets older, you're going to see this over a period of time, More of our investments will be on the maintenance side and less on the new capital side, and that's just the nature of becoming a more mature community. Finally, as we've talked about at length in the Finance Committee, and again was touched on by Ethan Lee, our Human Resource Director, we're anticipating a 3% salary increase for all employees, as well as an increase in the City 457 match of $500. We believe strongly in our employees preparing for retirement or what might be next for them. We've seen a significant improvement in the amount of money that our employees are investing in their retirement. We think that's really important, particularly with the fact that nearly 60 to 70% of our employees do physical work. They're policemen, they're firemen, they're public works employees. We want to make sure if for some reason they're physically not able to do the job any longer because of the physical demands of that job, that they have financial options for their future. And that's something that we preach quite often here at the City of Fishers, to ensure that they have an opportunity well beyond whether it's the police officer, the fireman, or the public works laborer. The 2020 general fund cash reserves, if you recall, we're very disciplined about making sure that we meet our cash reserve requirements. That equates to 50% of any given year's property tax anticipated revenue collections. So if you look at the light blue, that is our actual cash reserves. The dark blue is where we need to be from a performance standpoint or from our policies. And as you can see, there is a reduction from 2018 to 2019, and we're anticipating another one in 15, potentially. And the reason behind that is when we exceed our cash reserve policies to such an extent that we have cash on hand, there are times when we want to make one-time singular investments in capital projects versus financing it. So for instance, when you saw that reduction here from 2018 down to 2019, that was actually investing in our police department. We're looking and anticipating to do the same this upcoming year, where we're going to take some of those cash reserves and invest them in our fire stations as well. This just gives you sources of revenue. So our two main sources of revenue continue to be property taxes and local option income taxes, and the rest are other sources like permits, charges for services, EMS revenue, things of that nature. And those have stayed fairly consistent over the last several years, although I will tell you income tax has always seen a steady or greater increase than property taxes. And I would anticipate a time in the very near future where income tax revenue actually outpaces property tax revenue within Hamilton County. As we talk about where local option income tax, and as many of you probably can guess where I'm going with this, local option income taxes are collected countywide and then redistributed per a formula. Here's an example of some of the governmental entities that receive local option income taxes. As you can see, the lion's share does go to cities and towns, but there's also libraries, townships, special taxing districts in Hamilton County that get a share of that as well. So, as we talk about this formula of local option income tax revenue and how it's distributed, it's based on two things: what you got the year before, and then your prior tax collections, as well as your makeup of the overall levy, property tax levy, pre-2008 debt, okay? So those two things are what make up your proportion of income tax revenue. I would be remiss if I did not point out the disparities in this particular formula. So if you look at this bar chart up here tonight, in 2020, the local income tax distribution, you will see Fishers and Noblesville are fairly closely aligned, with Noblesville getting $21.6 million in income tax revenue, and Fishers getting $23.6 million. So a $2 million difference, even though our populations are probably a difference of about 30,000 people. Now, if you look at Carmel below us, we are within hundreds of people in terms of our population difference and minimal difference in median household income. And in 2020, we will receive $23.68 million, and Carmel will receive $43.5 million. That's a difference of nearly $20 million. Now, if we go back to our general fund budget of just over $60 million, that tells you one third of our budget is the difference in what they receive in income tax revenue. This continues to be a problem within Hamilton County. It's something we have to continue to raise up and make people aware of the disparities. We have worked with our state legislators. We've tried 2 years in a row now to get this fixed. We're continuing to have this conversation. This is not a slight on Carmel. It's just a matter of the formula having some unintended consequences, and we need to work to rectify that. A person's property tax rate, total tax rate, is made up of a lot of different tax rates, and I think it's important for people to note this. So there's a county tax rate, a township tax rate, a school district tax rate, a city tax rate, a library tax rate, and believe it or not, a solid waste tax rate that make up your total municipal or corporate tax rate. And so if you look at this in 2020 in Fall Creek, anticipated, our city will have a tax rate of 0.6915. Actually, this is 2019 tax rates, I apologize. The school district actually still, even though most of their operations come from the state in terms of their funding, they have an operating referendum, and then they have debt on a number of schools still that they're paying off. So they actually still have almost double the tax rate that the city of Fishers has. This gives you an idea of what we anticipate our municipal tax rate to be going forward. This is a comparison of Hamilton County communities. We're looking at a 0.7115 tax rate for next year, so about a 2-cent increase in the property tax rate. As you can see, the only community with a lower tax rate than us in Hamilton County is the city of Cicero, or I should say the town of Cicero. If we look at this with the 20 largest cities, the 15 largest cities in the state of Indiana, we are the blue one right here. This is our anticipated tax rate for 2020. The only community in the state of Indiana, or of the 15 largest communities, is Greenwood, who has a slightly lower tax rate than us by 6 cents. To give you an idea of the investments or capital projects that we look to do this upcoming year, a lot of this is about investing in maintaining the assets that the community already has. So I won't run through every one of these, but you get kind of a flavor for some of the investments that we'll be making. Things like an upgrade to the cloud storage for IT, police body cameras, security gate, fleet department heavy duty compressor. I mean, literally down to the types of things that make life livable and make our organization operational on any given day. Some of the larger capital projects that you will see this upcoming year, we have a fairly large capital program at our wastewater treatment plant, ultimately trying to get to 10 million gallons a day. This is truly a success story. If you would have been here in the 2007, 8, 9 timeframe, we were pretty committed to building twice the capacity for our wastewater treatment plant based on growth forecasts. We decided to take an alternative route where we incrementally increase, and now we're able to do only a 10 million gallon a day improvement versus the 14 or 16 million gallon a day that we would have done in 08 and 09. That has really allowed us to keep rates much lower than what we would have otherwise had to have done if we would have overbuilt, and we would have excess capacity at the treatment plant today. So that was something that Rick Farnham and the town council at the time really thought through, and it has been a success story for us. On the roads front, we're all about executing the projects that we've already communicated. So State Road 37, we want to execute on. 96th Street, the widening of 4 lanes from Lantern to Cumberland is another one. And really a success story, even as early as last night, really looking at concrete road repairs is a really, really important project for us. At Allisonville and 106th Street, our guys were out last night trying some new technologies that I think will really have a long-term impact on our roads. And the 2-cent increase, the one-time 2-cent increase that you see in the property tax rate is about concrete road repairs. So we have some significant high-ticket cost projects around roads, Technology Drive, as well as Burberry Place, the neighborhood, Burberry Estates. We need to go in there and do some significant concrete work, and this is a one-time 2-cent increase to go out and knock those projects out. This is a number of, we could go through each one of these additional capital items, but these are all replacements for vehicles. I will wait to answer any questions, Council President Block, until after the public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is a public hearing. Again, if there are members of the public who wish to speak, if you raise your hand, we'll call you up to the podium. You can introduce yourself, state your name and address for the record. You will be given 3 minutes in which to speak. We will not address the questions until after the public hearing is closed. Are there members of the public who wish to speak? Seeing none, nice job, Mayor. Questions, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing then. Questions of council or to the mayor?
I anticipate questions on Facebook tonight.
I don't have a question, just, when you take all emotion out of everything and you look at just the facts, you operate on a shoestring budget compared to other communities. Your staff knows that, obviously. And I just appreciate, I think collectively, I can speak for everybody, we really appreciate just the efforts that are put in to make this a first-class city. We were just named third, I think, in the nation on Money Magazine just today. And we continue to see growth, sustained, I believe, sustainable growth in our community, and we're not continuing to see the tax rates like you saw up there that Mayor presented from other cities, other communities. Not to knock those communities, just to say there's efficiency here. And when you look at it as a business, if it was a business you're taking care of, doing the right thing, making sure you're taking care of it with your money, I think it's efficiently run, and I appreciate that. And it makes things very easy when we come in here once a month and have to make decisions. It's very easy to make decisions that are focused not on emotion, not on what's going on Facebook or whatever, but what the facts are. And I, as a taxpayer with 3 kids of my own that my wife and I have to take care of that are in the school system, I appreciate that. So thank you.
Well said, Todd. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah,
John?
Scott, certainly, thank you for presenting the budget tonight. Me being chair of the Budget Finance Committee, we've been involved in that process, had a number of meetings to talk about this. And I think the one takeaway I can get away from is, yeah, we're operating a budget. We certainly are very efficient with our dollars. But the one thing I think you can take away is one thing you mentioned in the presentation, our county option income tax form. If our residents could do one thing, is that write our state reps and our state senators and let them know we need to fix this. Because it certainly is an area where we need to have that more fair and equitable distribution of the county option income tax. So that's one thing to get out of this is we continue to do well. Without it, we continue to be able to perform, but still, if we had that money that's Fisher's money that should be here at Fisher's, we would have a little different picture there.
Well, and I want to say I appreciate the city council over the last several years, and Brad can appreciate this from his days as mayor, and I know he's said this and reiterated it, but I do believe that this policy-making body has been about creating the highest value they can for their residents and not always the cheapest thing possible. And so we really do strive to create the highest value for your residents. So I'm not going to stand up here and say that we'll never ask for $1 out of someone's pocket, but we hope to provide $1.15 back in value. And I think that's the principles that we've led by as a city council and as a community, and I appreciate the effort and support that the city council has provided the entire organization as we've tried to deliver that value.
Very good.
Well said, Mayor. Chris, is there any action that we need to take?
Open and close the public hearing. You can just recognize first and second reading. We'll bring it back for a final reading next month.
I'll recognize first and second reading.
Very good. Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Mayor, for that thorough presentation, and thank you for the other comments of council. Item 15, 091619D.
For the record, Lisa Bradford, City Controller. I'm going to talk about items 15 and 16 together. They're actually interrelated. So if I could, I'm going to start with item 16, R091619G, the request to approve a resolution approving the station's project lease. So item 16 is part of the station's project agreement that was previously approved. And this resolution approves the lease between the Town Hall Building Corp. And the RDC. And so this will be a TIF bond backed with property taxes. But as we discussed, the property tax is simply a backup security on this. We anticipate this will be paid from the station's allocation area, and it will be bond proceeds in an amount not to exceed $5 million. And then item 15, the introduction of the station's project bond series, simply approves the issuance of the bonds and the lending of them to the Town Hall Building Corp. For the lease purposes. Are there any questions?
I'm gonna make a motion to suspend the rules on item 15
Yes.
and approve on first reading.
Motion by Pete to suspend the rules. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by John. All in favor of suspending the rules for item 15?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by
Second.
Pete, second by John.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Oh, note, Eric's abstained. Item 16,
And then I'm gonna make a motion to approve that.
motion by Pete to
Second it.
approve 16, second by John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? You're one, okay, another abstention. Very good, both pass. Item 17, is this you still, Lisa?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Item 17 is a procedural step related to a refunding. The tax law change a few years ago took away advance refundings before they were at a certain point. So what this does is allow us to refund the county option income tax bonds of 2019, or 2009 to 2019. And so this will essentially save us a little over $500,000 in debt service payments by refunding. And so if there are no questions, I'd ask you to suspend the rules and pass on first reading.
No questions. Great that you're attentive to this and taking advantage of it, so thank you.
And I think it's worth noting, we talked about this in Finance Committee, they're going to continue to look for these opportunities. There's some different things with issuance costs where the payback isn't as great, but as Lisa said at our last Finance Committee meeting, they're going to continue to look at all opportunities to refinance these bonds.
Great.
Okay, motion to suspend the rules and approve on first reading.
A second.
Motion to suspend the rules by Pete, second by Todd. All in favor of suspending the rules?
Aye.
Opposed?
Now, motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Pete, second by Todd. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Item 18, R091619J.
This is simply a procedural step related to the Nickel Plate Trail and Road Improvement Bond that's been previously approved by council. The bond is structured as a lease between the Redevelopment Authority and the Redevelopment Commission, and the leased asset is Hague Road, actually between 96th and 116th Street. And so this is just a procedural step to transfer the leased asset so it can be used as the security.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion approved by Pete, second by Cecilia. Sorry, John.
That's quite all right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa. Item 19, 081919. Megan?
Good evening. For the record, Megan Schaefer with the Planning and Zoning Department. This item is for the third and final reading of a voluntary annexation for Bridger Pines 2, located in the the southeast side of Fishers. If you guys have any questions, I'm here to answer that.
I'm glad you stopped. You're perfect. So again, because this is a third reading, this is the third time we've heard it.
Right.
So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Pete, second by Todd. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good.
She's getting to know me about that. That's awesome.
Sorry, Megan, that he had to cut you off.
That's great.
Item 20, 091619F.
For the record, Jesse Boschel with Planning and Zoning. The item you have before you tonight is ordinance number 091619F, the Cynthia Meadows PUD. Subject to request is located at 16265 and 16283 East 126th Street, which is located south of 126th Street and east of Cynthia Park. The two parcels combined total 13.12 acres, and the property is currently zoned R2. The petitioner is seeking to rezone the properties from R2 to PUD-R to create the Cynthia Meadows PUD. The petitioner will be combining the two parcels to subdivide the land into 14 custom home sites, with the underlying zoning being R2. Lots permitted in this subdivision will be 14, with a minimum lot area of 17,000 square feet, and minimum living unit area for a ranch 2,200 square feet and two-story at 2,400 square feet. The project will be incorporating a rain garden at the front of the subdivision for drainage purposes, and the petitioner has agreed to continue the path along 126th Street down the east property line all the way to Cynthia Park, providing the connection on 126th to Cynthia Park. The petitioner will be maintaining as much of the natural area as possible with little disturbance, preserving a substantial amount of trees in the area, placing these trees in common area that are on the lots, and in this area right here that's adjacent to Piper Glen. Project will be connected to the Piper Glen subdivision via the existing substreet to the east, and will stub to the south in instance that future development occurs on the land. Just to provide you some of the architectural design, this has already gone through the PUD committee and received unanimous favor and approval. Just for note, all new dwellings will have a side or rear loaded garage and will be a minimum of 2-car garage and a maximum of 4-car garage, and 2-car garages will be oversized with an 80 square foot extra of storage. All homes will have decorative garages as well. Some use regulations that you probably saw in the PUD ordinance: there will only be one primary structure shall be built on these platted lots, with no subdividing allowed for any further of these lots, so it will always be 14 lots. These homes will be allowed to have in-law quarters or granny flats used as accessories to the primary dwelling on the property. However, they shall be attached to and designed and constructed as part of the primary structure and shall not exceed 1,200 square feet of living area. Just some uses that will not be allowed: beauty salons or repairing or servicing of any equipment or parts, including motor vehicles. As I said, the proposed architecture was approved by our PUD committee in July, receiving unanimous favor and approval, and also received unanimous favor and approval at Plan Commission on September 4th. The petitioner has agreed to voluntarily annex into the city of Fishers, and as such, staff is supportive of the rezone of the property from R2 to PUDR, as Cynthia Meadows will complement the surrounding area in character and use, having more restrictions on design and development. And the petitioner is here if you have any questions for them.
Okay. Thank you, Jesse. Any questions? The petitioner, does the petitioner wish to speak? I don't know that it's necessary unless there are questions.
Yeah, I'm going to make a motion to approve. It was really, they did a really good job at Planning Commission.
I agree.
I think, and they answered some of Brad's questions. Brad had a couple good questions, particularly about the rear setback. So everything that we asked at Planning Commission was answered very well, and I think everybody was on board with that there for the unanimous approval.
Yep.
So I'm going to make a motion to approve.
Motion approved by Pete, second by Selena. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Very good. Thank you. Item 21, no public. Item 21, 091619G.
For the record, Jesse Boschello, Planning and Zoning. This is the associated voluntary annexation of the properties. If you have any questions, this is the first and second reading, so it does require a public hearing.
Oh, this is public hearing. Thank you. Okay, so this is a public hearing. If there are members of the public wishing to speak, if you'd raise your hand. Seeing none, are there no members wishing to speak? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing.
Have first and second reading.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you.
Item 22, 091619H.
For the record, Megan Schaefer with the Planning and Zoning Department. This item is for the consideration of a rezone from PUD to R2 residential. The subject property is located on the north side of 126th Street, east of Cumberland Road, and is located immediately adjacent to the existing Fishers Church of Christ property. The existing zoning of the property is PUDR. It's within the 126th Street Special Standards District. This PUD was approved in 2010 in response to a road expansion project on 126th Street and allows for the reduction in front yard setbacks and lot sizes for the existing homes that were affected by the road improvements. But the PUD currently does allow for R2 uses. So Fishers Church of Christ wishes to demo the existing home and incorporate that subject property into their existing parcel. As such, they're requesting a rezone from PUD to R2 to align with the new property zoning with the existing property zoning. If rezoned, the petitioner would need to go through the platting process to legally establish the lot and submit an ILP and building permit for site improvements before final approval is given. The Fishers 2040 plan does distinguish this property as suburban residential, which is consistent with the requested rezone. Fishers Church of Christ is here to help answer any questions, and staff recommends you approve the request as presented.
Megan, just for clarity's sake, would you mind just, do you have the site plan? Because I think there were some questions raised at the Planning Commission meeting about what the use would be in this ground, and really it's not for the building expansion, but for parking expansion, correct?
Yes, so the property that will be rezoned is going to be mostly used for their parking expansion and then expanding their existing detention pond as needed. But they will be adding some classrooms as well as a part of their expansion. And an additional access, yes. But there is an existing driveway on that property today.
Right.
So
Good.
the number of access points isn't increasing.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I think as I recall, there's a number of people that came in and remonstrated against that, or not against it, but certainly had questions. All those people's names were taken. There's a couple things we were gonna get back to once they figured out exactly the retention pond stuff, on the setbacks, but everybody else was pretty in favor of that. I think Planning Commission was also in favor of that. With the
Yeah,
questions.
and-
No one was really overly upset with anything there, so, with that, I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Pete, second by anybody? Second by Eric. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Motion passes. Item 23, 091619I.
So the next two items are annexations, just want to give you a heads up, but they do require public hearings. So the first one is going to be for the two lots on the south side of 126th Street, just west of Oleo Road. You guys saw that rezone come through for those residences to office commercial. So now they're coming back for the voluntary annexation of that.
Okay, this is another public hearing. If there are members of the public wishing to speak, please state, or raise your hand. We'll call you to the podium if you'd state your name. Okay, are there any materials you can show up at the screen? But are there any members of the public wishing to speak? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Any questions of Megan?
Yeah, first and second.
All right, very good. Thank you. Item 24, 091619J. Again, as Megan noted, this is a public hearing, but Megan, do you want to tell us about this?
Yeah, so this is just for the annexation of the Fishers Church of Christ expansion that we just talked about the rezone for.
Okay. So again, this is a public hearing. Are there members of the public wishing to speak? If you'd raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing.
Have first and second reading.
Very good. Thank you, Pete. Item 25, any unfinished or new business? Okay. Item 26, community comment. Sir, Brad? Again, if there are members who wish to come before us, just state your name and address for the record. You'll be given, again, 3 minutes to speak.
Brad Jones, 13534 Kelsey Lane over in Stevenson Mill. First, I'd like to say a huge, huge thank you for Allisonville Road. I live off that. The construction, I know it took a long time, but now that it's nearly done, it's really nice. The trail that's beside it, I don't think was in the 2040 plan. It's nice to see that. People are using it. Thank you. Digressing from that, continuing on with Allisonville Road.
You can still say nice things.
I live off Allisonville Road. I'm not going to rehash last Saturday, the 8th. I think it raised a lot of issues, security, lots of posts on that. But it raises two other issues, one I've brought up before and a new one I'm going to bring up. And I just want to say that as you guys are looking and evaluating that you do work with Carmel and Noblesville as well as everybody else, because there were 3 lanes turning right going south on Allisonville at 146th Street, which is a 1 right lane turn, and there were lots of things like that going on. My biggest concern is our only access is off of Allisonville Road into our neighborhood. So when we get a bunch of parking and we can't get to the neighborhood, if there had been an accident in our neighborhood that day, the fire and police would not have been able to get there. I know the week before, the neighborhood north of us had a person that called an emergency. I know we had the fire engines in our neighborhood this week. So we got to figure out something to where we are not completely landlocked with our cars. Having said that, another issue is for those of us that live off Allisonville, coming home when those events at Conner Prairie are happening, in the evening, they close down 131st Street, or at Allisonville 131st Street, so we are redirected away from Allisonville Road and can't get home without going out of our way to get into our neighborhoods. If it was an accident, I could understand that, but as a resident being redirected and prevented from getting home, it just doesn't make sense to me, and I'm not the only resident that's running into that. And it's happened multiple times, which is why I bring it here. And then the other point is, an issue I brought up prior to the construction was our neighborhood, when you leave, you have to cross 141st Street, but when you're turning into our neighborhood going south, the traffic doesn't stop. It flies by, even though there's not a passing lane. We had 4 accidents prior to the construction starting. Construction slowed everything down, so it's been good for the last 2 years. Now the construction's done, speed limits are going back up, or people's speeds are going back up, and now back up to a 45, 50 mile an hour speed in that single lane. So when you're turning left, and I posted a video of this recently on my Facebook page, when you're turning left, cars are whizzing by you. And they're still doing 25 or 30 miles an hour, and they're going off the road to do that, which is illegal because we don't have a passing lane. The wrecks are going to start again, and as we get new people onto Allisonville that are not familiar with that are trying to make an alternative from 37, who are used to going 55, I think the number of incidents are going to increase for those of us that have neighborhoods that require a left turn off of Allisonville. And if that's going to stay 2 lanes, then that issue is going to be big. So what I would like to request is that you look at the 2040 plan, you consider some changes to Allisonville. 4 lanes up to the entrance of Conner Prairie would have made more sense to alleviating traffic like last week. 4 lanes up to 141st Street, or even all the way up to 146th Street. And I know it's not an easy fix, but I think that really needs to be looked at for the accident reasons for what happened last Saturday. And I'm just here to say, could you please look at it before the accidents start in front of our neighborhood again? Because like I said, we had 4 in 1 year, and one of those led to a death. And I've brought that up before, and we don't want to get back to that. So,
Sir, I might have missed it. What was your neighborhood name? What's the neighborhood?
Stevenson Mills, my neighborhood. We have single, and then one above us is a single. There's like 3 or 4 that don't have a bump out, a blister, whatever it's called, to turn left. And what it is people get on their cell phones. Because I know the city had said they'd put up a sign saying, watch for people turning left. That never happened, but it didn't matter because people are on their cell phones. They aren't going to read the sign just like they aren't going to see the car.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you. Mayor, do you want to say anything? Because I know you've had discussions already with Conner Prairie.
Yeah, so I reached out to Conner Prairie immediately after last Saturday, and we're going to have to talk to the ISO and Conner Prairie. I have our public safety folks and our traffic folks. We're all going to sit down and have a conversation about what's the capacity of that venue that we can safely park and function, and then that's going to have to be a cap of that. In this particular case, our law enforcement folks who work out there off duty, they've never seen more than 10,000 people at an event, and at one point there was 13,000 people there, and there was still probably 2,000 or 3,000 people on the road trying to get there. And that's just something that we're going to have to manage our way through, and it's a wonderful asset in our community, but we're going to have to manage capacity and then look at infrastructure issues as well.
Well, thanks for looking into it.
Yep.
Can I add a comment?
Yes, sir?
I mean, we know that it's not Conner Prairie. I mean, we know they're releasing that to ISO and other venues, and I've lived in Stevenson Mill for 25 years now. I was the first house there, so I've seen Conner Prairie traffic come and go. And so I get what you're saying. I mean, the other issue is if they put their capacity at 11,000 parking, the 12 and 13,000th cars are going to be in our neighborhood. There was a car left running.
Well, I think what I'm referring to is the amount of tickets. Yeah.
Because there was a car left running in front of my house for 3 hours on that Saturday with nobody in it.
Yeah.
Well, and thank you again for making us aware. I think it'd be great if maybe after this, Brad, we can take some time. Thank you. Any other members? Jocelyn?
Good evening, I'm Jocelyn Vare. My address is 13873 Carolina Court in Fishers. My thoughts about a budget presentation to residents should be a difficult day, especially when the proposal includes a tax increase for residents. And I just want to sum this up, and please correct me if I'm wrong. But what I understand is in 2018, our tax rate was 65 cents for every $100 of assessed value. And then for 2019, it increased to 69 cents for every $100 of assessed value. And now the proposal is 71 cents, an increase of 71 cents for every $100 of assessed value. For a community like ours, as property values keep increasing, this is starting to have a real feel for our residents. I also want to mention 2019, when I was here about a year ago, the increase to 69 cents, my understanding was a part of that increase was to fund a $12 million bond, in part to fund the first phase of the Nickel Plate Trail from 106th Street to 126th Street. This is a project that residents are very in tune to and have a lot of questions about. And I certainly feel like, in the spirit of responsibility and accountability, to be able to speak into that as one of the reasons that taxes were increased for 2019. Residents, and myself included, are very interested in knowing the scope of that project, the deliverables of that project, and the cost of that project. The other thing I would like to mention real quick is I'm not sure if I understand the relevance of comparing Fishers' tax rate to other municipalities' tax rates. Again, I'm just not sure if I understand the relevance there, but I would love to know if there are other municipalities in Indiana, let's say, that have now 2 years of increasing residents' tax rate. So to me, that's what's very relevant. The last thing I'll mention real quick is I looked at 3 other municipalities, Indianapolis, South Bend, and Carmel. Their 2020 budget proposal does not include any increase in tax rates, but I want to share a moment about their process. In Indianapolis, their budget was formally presented to the public over a month ago. In South Bend, they had their first public forum about their budget back in April. And in Carmel, they have public televised budget workshops, 2 in September. The first one was held on September 10th and was almost 3 hours long. So that was a slog. However, my point is, I think that's very important to have plenty of lead time before the deadline of when the budget is approved. Okay, thank you. I know my time's up.
Thank you.
Well, usually when you're trying to attract companies to your city and really people as well, the tax climate for which a community has is an important element in attracting capital and people. And so when we compare ourselves to other communities in terms of tax rate, it really speaks to a couple things. One, our attractiveness in terms of our ability to recruit additional companies to our community. And secondly, I think it really speaks to efficiency. And so our ability to provide a high level of service, a high level of value at the limited level of taxation. When we talk about 2 or 3 years of taxes increasing in the city of Fishers, I would point to some really great quality of life amenities that have happened in our community. And again, it's political season, and I understand that to a degree. But there's also this, as I spoke in our presentation, this community has always said that we're going to be the highest value, not necessarily the lowest cost. And so when we evaluated things like capturing the last developable land along Geist Reservoir for a park that'll be here for 100 years, whether it's the massive transportation improvement that will happen along State Road 37, whether it's a new home for our police department, 2 new fire stations, those are investments in the quality of life for our community that will last well beyond any political cycle. And so I think, yes, the tax rate has gone up. Can I point directly to quality of investments, quality of life? Absolutely. And would stand before anyone and have that conversation about those sound investments for the long term.
Well, then the point that was made about Carmel not increasing their tax rate this year, and how many millions of dollars more are they getting?
$20 million more a year.
And how much is that of our budget, of our city, whole city budget?
It's 1/3.
One third of our city budget.
And their property tax rate is 6 cents higher than us today.
Property tax is higher than us.
And they have a food and beverage tax.
And yes, and we do not have food and beverage.
That's how they have those sculptures in the middle of their roundabout.
So.
Too long. Yeah, it's been. We did our first series back probably 4 or 5 years ago for concrete repairs, and it's overdue to finish that up.
One thing that I want to make mention of about the trail that was brought up is that the tracks have come up, the ties have come up, and I've seen several members of our community that are out utilizing the trail to ride their road bikes on.
Not that we advocate.
Not that we advocate
There
it,
are people out
but
there.
to me, it tells me how excited the community is for the trail. They can't wait. Not, like you said, we're not advocating it, but it is already being utilized.
And as for the process, you know, those finance committees are publicly noticed, and we've chewed through at length, you know, hours on end, talking about debt, talking about operational budgets, talking about our overall fiscal plan. I really do encourage anyone to attend those fiscal meetings that we have, finance committee meetings. We hold them after work hours. It's usually at 5:30, so that people are available to make it to those, and certainly welcome any feedback on anything we're doing from a financial perspective.
The meeting we had about debt strategy was, what, an hour and a half, 2 hours long?
Yeah, we've had at least 3 to 4 different meetings. They're all publicly noticed. You know, last month at our council meeting, had a lovely lady here who was, you know, she was concerned that she couldn't find when does everything happen. She says, everything happens so fast here. Why do I not know? And I said, have you looked at our website? And she goes, well, which one? I go, well, there's only one. And what I've been able to do with, and her name's Jan, she's a sweet lady. I email her every Monday, telling her, here's what's going on, you know, this date, this date, this date, this date. And, you know, I think we give, you know, plenty of opportunities for people to come in and sit down and talk about what's going on in our community, and certainly welcome anybody who wants to talk to me or anybody up here. We're not hard to find, and we're always willing to sit down and buy a cup of coffee and talk about what's going on in our community. Hi, Jan. How are you? Welcome.
That's great.
I'm glad you came. Good. I'll email you next Monday. What are you doing for lunch next week?
All right. Are there any other members of the public who wish to make a comment? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, Dana Colbert, 12187 Windsor South Drive in Fishers. In the spirit of just making sure that we have these community conversations, I was wondering who is planning to attend the League of Women Voters Forum on October 1st? If that's something that you would be open to discussing? Or just
Oh,
let us know?
I'll be there. I always go to those.
I am out of town.
Okay.
I think we're all, pretty much all.
Yep.
Awesome, great. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other members of the community wish to make a comment? Seeing none, we'll close the community comment section.
Motion adjourned.
Motion adjourned, second by?
Second.
Second by Todd. Thank you.